Hello and welcome back to Planet 40k. We're carrying on with our reviews from the Space Marine Codex. This time we're looking at one of the troop options, the Infiltrator squad. So before we do guys, just another plug for a podcast that is run by friends of the channel. Their show is called The Nerd Bunker and this is their ad. So go give them a listen, and if you do enjoy their content then remember to follow them on all their platforms. Right, on to today's video. So the Infiltrators, as mentioned, are a troop choice within the book. They're 6 power level for a unit of up to 5, and if you do want 6 to 10 models then it's going to be 12 power level. As for points, they're 24 points per model, and that's before any upgrades are taken. Starting off as we always do with their keywords. So they've got the Imperium keyword, they can go into any chapter. They've got the smoke screens keyword, they've got core, they're Primaris, Phobos, and they're in infantry. So lots of those keywords will interact with a lot of the codex itself, which we'll pick up on as we go through the review. As for their stat line, movement 6 inch, weapon skill 3+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 4, toughness 4, wounds 2, attacks 2, leadership 7 and a 3+ save. And as standard, the unit comes with a sergeant and he'll have an extra attack and an extra point of leadership, giving the unit leadership of 8. So pretty standard troop stats for a marine unit, and of course now being 2 wounds a model, it's pretty sweet. Looking at their abilities, of course the standard of having Angels of Death, giving them a host of rules. One of them is an shall know no fear to avoid modifiers for combat attrition tests. Bolt of Discipline, which will affect one of your weapons here, so we will discuss it. Now, as normal rapid fire weapons go, you can shoot double the amount of shots at half range, but with Bolt of Discipline you can also do it at full range if your infantry unit remains stationary during your movement phase. Shock Assault, which gives an extra attack to each model within the unit if they were charged, discharged or heroically intervene. Then there's Combat Doctrines, which gives you a better armour penetration for your weapons depending on which battle round you're in. I'll mention this more in the weapons section of the review. They've then got Combat Squads, which is if you take a max unit of 10 Infiltrators, you can decide during deployment on whether you want to split them into 2 units of 5 or keep them as a 10-man unit. This has all sorts of tactical advantages, and also if you did want to go with 2 units of 5, then you won't need to use up 2 battlefield slots with your troop options of your detachment. It's only going to take 1. They've got Concealed Positions, which is an ability to set your guys up in deployment but anywhere on the board as long as they're more than 9 inches away from enemy models. So it's a bit like Deep Strike, but you're doing it pre-game, and in turn 1 you could effectively move closer and charge, only needing a 3-inch charge to get in. The final ability which they have is Omni Scrambler. So this is to prevent any enemy units from setting up within 12 inches of the unit. Now this is a pretty powerful ability, as your unit can be set up anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches away from enemy models with their concealed positions, and now you can put them maybe in terrain that's near the centre of the board so that your opponent can't be deep striking in within 12 inches. So that's a 12-inch radius that's going around your unit. It's going to cover a good amount of the board for deep strike denial. It could also be used within your own deployment zone to again deny room for backline deep strike and alpha strikes, so it's a solid protection bubble. Now to add to this further, don't forget you can even combat squad these guys, which now feels to me like a no-brainer, as you'll get twice as many 12-inch bubbles to block off, and also have 2 lots of objective secured units that are capable of taking care of themselves. So really good synergy within their own abilities there. So let's talk about their weapons and damage output. So every model is equipped with a bolt pistol, marksman bolt carbine, and then the frag and crack grenades. So the bolt pistol is only useful when you're within combat, as you can fire your pistols within engagement range. Now I'll put on the screen for you with the bolt pistol as well as the frag and crack grenades just for information's sake, but they are quite common marine weapons those. As for the marksman bolt carbine, this is slightly different. It's a 24-inch range, rapid fire 1, strength 4, no AP and 1 damage. Each time an attack is made with this weapon, an unmodified hit roll of a 6 will automatically wound. Now they're pretty much the same stats as a bolt gun here, but those 6s auto wound. So if we are talking about a 5-man unit of these guys shooting 10 shots due to rapid fire, 10 shots on average will net you about 6.7 hits, but from those hits you will average 1.7 of those with 6s. So you're looking at about 1 or 2 roughly auto wounding right off the bat. Now the rest still need to wound, and they're just standard strength 4, so only going to be really useful on toughness 4 models or less. Toughness 5 is probably not going to be taking too much damage from you as it requires 5s to wound, but toughness 4 or less is perfectly fine. Now this being a rapid fire weapon will also give you a -1 AP if you fire it during the tactical doctrine, which is turn 2 and optionally turn 3. So try to make use of firing during those turns especially. So in honesty, the weapon is a bit so-so, but I see these guys as just being a regular Space Marine body. There's a couple of options for one model within the unit to take. Now you can only take one of the following: a Helix Gauntlet or an Infiltrator Comms Array. So the Helix Gauntlet is a once per turn item, and as soon as the bearer's unit fails a saving throw, the damage is then put to 0. So even if you put a damage 6 weapon on them and it's the first failed save, it just becomes damage 0, so it does nothing. So I quite like that. It's kind of like having a free feel no pain save for 1 dice, but there's no roll, it just happens automatically. Now that upgrade is going to cost you 10 points, but I feel like it's worth it as every model in the unit is 24 points, and you'll either save a model from dying or saving a wound going through, and it's every turn too. The second option is the Infiltrator Comms Array for 5 points, which always considered your unit to be within range of the following Phobos abilities that are in battle. So if you have any Rites of Battle auras, usually given by captains to reroll 1s to hit, or Tactical Precision auras, which are usually given by the lieutenants that give rerolls 1s to wound, you can take this as if you were right next to them within the aura range, even if you wasn't. So just bear in mind that either the captain or the lieutenant, or both, need to be on the battlefield and wearing Phobos armour. You can't use regular ones, as the rule specifically says chapter Phobos units. So this one's not bad, as you're always 3s rerolling 1s. That's if you take those certain HQs, but prefer the Helix Gauntlet to be honest, just to add that unit survivability, as ultimately this unit are going to be camping on objectives, so need to be durable. You're better off buffing other units with the captains and other HQs, so sticking the Phobos captain in there just for these guys isn't that effective. Unless your list mainly is around Phobos units anyway, then it will work a treat. If not, don't force it to. Just get the Helix Gauntlet for 10 points. So that's the upgrade options now. We didn't mention the melee. They don't carry any melee weapons, so they have their standard 2 attacks and then 1 more attack for Shock Assault, giving a 5-man unit 15 attacks, 1 more for the Sergeant as well, 16. But if you're in combat, you're quite likely to be fighting against a combat orientated unit that will slice your guys up. So pick your targets carefully for combat, only fight if you need to, and always remain within range of an objective for your guys to hold. I mean, that's their job at the end of the day, holding objectives. Let other units in the faction do the heavy work. Your infiltrators are pretty much bringing in the points. You can be slightly more aggressive with them and start pushing units off their objectives that are in the centre or even at the back of the battlefield, but don't expect them to last too long without support. They'll be more like a throwaway unit if you try it, so leave that to the fast attack options or those elite options with invuln saves. Taking a look at some stratagem, starting off with the transhuman physiology for 1 CP, if that's a unit of 5, or 2 CP if you've got more than 5. So it means that your opponent will need to roll at least a 4 to wound that unit. So for example, a strength 5 weapon would usually wound on 3s, but with this stratagem 3s won't be enough, it will need to be 4. So it effectively makes the enemy weapons that are targeting your unit a strength 4 for that phase only, and this only works on Primaris units. Uncompromising fire for 2 CP lets your unit fire and still do their actions for secondaries, so it might be better served on a unit with better strength weapons, but in certain situations you may need to use the firepower to defend an objective. Steady Advance, also for 2 CP, lets you move as normal, but you'll be considered to have remained stationary for the purpose of bolter discipline, so you're still being able to move and then shoot at double shots at 24-inch range there. Adaptive Strategy for 2 CP can be used provided that your Warlord is still alive. For the rest of the turn, your unit has all the doctrines active. Guerrilla Tactics for 1 CP used in the movement phase, so when a Phobos unit such as your Infiltrators is more than 6 inches away from enemy units, the unit can jump into strategic reserves and come back out in a later turn. It can be useful to try and use more area denial in an area of the board that you may think is a bit more under threat, but it is quite situational. Then finally you got Smokescreen for 1 CP, gives enemy units that are targeting your unit a -1 to hit modifier. So maybe they're trying to shift you off an objective, so this will be somewhat helpful keeping you on it. Another area of the book that you guys can benefit from is the Warlord Traits. Now they can't directly have a Warlord trait of course, but you can be within range of a Warlord aura. So for example, your Warlord might have the Storm of Fire trait, which will add a -1 AP modifier to your Carwines in all rounds, not just the tactical doctrine. If you took a Warlord with the Phobos armor, then you can take one of the Vanguard Warlord traits. So the first is Shoot and Fade. It's a once per turn trait that can be used if the unit is within 6 inches of the Warlord. You can effectively fire and then move and advance as well. Now you can't charge after doing this, but its added movement can really help you get to where you want to go or get you out of line of sight. Master of the Vanguard is an aura from your Warlord which will allow your Infiltrator unit to add 1 to movement and charge moves. Then Target Priority, that simply adds 1 to your attacks roll if within 6 inches of a Warlord. Now that one pretty much gives you 2s, rerolling 1s if it's a captain. As for Psychic powers, the only one of note here from the Liberius discipline is Psychic Fortress, giving you a 5+ in-1 save. Then from the Phobos version of the powers, which is the Obscuration discipline, Shrouding can be cast on a unit, which means that they can't be targeted unless they're the nearest eligible unit, so they can't be targeted for ranged attacks. Soul Sight is next. So each time a model that makes a ranged attack, they can reroll the hit roll and the target does not receive benefits of cover against the attack either. You've got Temporal Corridor, which is the last one of note, which allows your unit to move and auto-advance 6 inches in the psychic phase. Now this only works provided that they're not in combat and you cannot shoot or charge this turn. So you move and advance in your movement turn, which could be anything from 7 inch to 12 inch. Then you add another 12 inch on top for your movement and advancing. And it's an auto 6 this time, and you're doing that in the psychic phase, so giving you a total of anything between 19 inches and 24 inches depending on the advance roll in the movement phase. Just a lot of movement there, and again situational tactics, but I'm sure there's some good little combos you can do this with. Litany is another buff for your unit as they're a core unit, so the ones in particular to aid your unit are the Litany of Faith, giving you a 5+ feel no pain roll against mortal wounds. Catechism of Fire, giving your unit a +1 to wound when firing ranged attacks. Then Resuscitation of Focus, giving you a +1 to hit with your ranged weapons. The others are more related to melee, which I would rather not be in melee with this unit. So the final topic to really discuss here is how the unit interacts with certain chapters. Now I'll probably interact with most chapters as they're a sort of unit that will fit into any chapter and do pretty well, as they simply hold objectives and deny deep strike space. So I'm not going to be talking about all the obvious synergy here, as this unit isn't really a shooter unit or a melee unit, it's more of a tactical unit. So this leans me towards certain chapters such as Ultramarines and Raven Guard. Now Ultramarines have their Codex Discipline chapter tactic, which adds 1 to the unit's leadership. They also are allowed to fall back and still shoot, although it would be a -1 to hit. Now they've got their own doctrine, which is the Signs of Guillemot, using the tactical doctrine which allows the unit to move and fire as if they remain stationary. So again, it assists with that bolter discipline, still giving them double shots at full range. Now the Raven Guard have their own chapter tactic, which is Shadow Masters, so each time a ranged attack is made against the unit, and if the attackers are more than 18 inches away, then your unit is going to be treated as if it's in light cover. And then furthermore, each time a ranged attack is made against your unit, and your unit is completely within a terrain feature and more than 12 inches away, then you're going to be getting dense cover as well. So if you get both abilities, they can stack up quite nicely, as one's going to give you a 2+ armor save and one's going to be a -1 to hit. A really good durability with that. Now they've got their own doctrine, which is Surgical Strike, so whilst the tactical doctrine is active, any attacks made against a character you can add 1 to the hits and wound rolls, so it's probably not going to happen much for that if I'm honest, but it's mainly the Shadow Master chapter tactic that's a thing to look at there. So both of these chapter supplements have tons of other things that you can do, from their psychic powers, stratagems, warlord traits and relics. I can't really go through each one, otherwise these videos are going to be more like an hour long, and not everybody here watching plays Ultramarines and Raven Guard. So I would just simply say to all of you to go into your own supplements, read through the stratagems and other abilities within the book, and think how could this help your unit. You'll probably find a gem or two if you look hard enough. So to close the review and summarise the unit, I actually really like the unit. Now I'm fully aware that the damage output is pretty minimal, and they don't have options like a tactical squad does with combi weapons and whatnot. But this unit isn't really brought to your list to do damage. They're there to score you points or deny space, preferably both. That's how you get the max use out of the unit, is trying to do both. So maybe getting them into the middle of the table, getting them on an objective and deny deep strike space from the centre. Now if you're against an opponent that's declared a lot of deep striking units or a lot of units within strategic reserves, and those units are quite punchy, then yes, change your play up, set them a bit more into your own deployment zone. So you don't want those enemy units coming behind you on turn 2 and smashing up all your main threats within a single turn. So make them come down into limbo 12 inches away, and then have a whole turn at just shooting that unit to get rid of them off the board. I'd highly advise combat squadding to have 2 lots of those 12-inch bubbles defending your area, or defending the centre of board, giving you a huge amount of board control early on. Get some supporting units near them from turn 2 onwards to prevent them from getting moved off the board. I'd always take that Helix Gauntlet just to add some more durability each round. It will easily make its points back up, and I'd also make use of that Smokescreen Stratagem too to add for survivability. Now the unit feels a bit like a tougher scout unit, but those scouts are now moved to the elite section within the book. So these are your next best thing, and they do a pretty decent job at it too, and they've got 2 wounds each with a 3+ save. Now as for rating, I'm going to be giving the Infiltrators a Planet 40k rating of 3.5 out of 5. 3 being average, so they're definitely above average for me. They're quite an advanced players unit in my opinion. They still do all the standard Marine troop stuff, but with those extra abilities that really cause issues with certain armies that use a lot of deep strike and strategic reserves. That Helix Gauntlet is like having a mini apothecary within the unit each turn, which I think is quite cool as it's quite different from other units. That's what I think. Let me know your thoughts below. Also let me know what chapter you use them with and what buffs do you put on them. So guys and girls, don't forget to check out our Patreon service for those early access videos and polls and all that other good 40k related stuff. It massively helps in funding the channel, so take a look at that if you can. You can find us on both Twitter and Instagram, to where at some point in 2021 we are going to begin doing giveaways to our followers and patrons. So give us a follow on both of those to keep on top of that. Also don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you are new. Then finally remember to like the video on the way out. Thank you all for watching and I'll see you in the next one.